The parts of the brain that are affected in SCAR, which is the cerebellum, the brainstem and the pons, and the top of the spinal cord, are these bits exactly here: cerebellum, pons, top of the spinal cord. Okay? So the bits of the brain involved in helping us stay awake and maintain wakefulness and go to sleep and maintain sleep are the same bits of the brain that are affected by SCAR. Now these two bits of the brain sort of talk to each other, and you think of it a bit like a seesaw, and you want sleep to work a bit like a seesaw, where it's either up or it's down and you're not halfway in between. Because as human beings we want to be either awake or asleep and spend very little time in the half and half sort of space. Now all of us, when we drift off to sleep, have these transient sort of periods where we're in that no man's land, halfway between wake and sleep, and we get some features of sleep and some features of wake. We'll be in bed, semi-aware of the environment, but have some sort of dream playing on, and maybe your spouse comes in and says, "Hey, you were drifting off." You go, "No, I wasn't asleep," because you don't recognise you've been asleep. You've been in this no man's land between wake and sleep. But you really want to be either one or the other. And normally that's what these bits of the brain do. You have the wake-promoting pathways either on very strongly, pushing the seesaw to the wake side, the sleep-promoting pathways on very strongly, pushing the seesaw to the sleep side. There's a chemical that sort of acts as a stabiliser for the seesaw, stops it flipping from one to the other, called orexin. There's a condition called narcolepsy where people are deficient in orexin. And, you see in Hollywood movies, people with narcolepsy fall asleep all the time. So when they're awake they fall asleep, when they're asleep they wake up. They don't have this, so they've got an unstable seesaw, a seesaw that just flops about like this all the time. Now orexin is produced again in one of the bits of the brain that SCAR affects. So some people with SCAR can have this type of, come in, no worries, sleep instability. So an inability to stay asleep and an inability to stay awake. When you're awake, feel sleepy, you want to drift off to sleep. When you're asleep, lightest things will wake you up. Now the other bit that's important is in the pons, the lower part of the brain that SCAR affects, acetylcholine secreting nerves. These are very important in movements, and in a normal functioning sleep sort of system, the acetylcholine neurons are very important at turning off movement in the rest of the body. So when we go to sleep, basically don't act out dreams. The only muscles that should work during dreams are the eyeballs and the diaphragm. And if you watch your dog sleep, you see the dogs, eyes flipping, they get a bit of a twitch and stuff. In humans we're the same. Nothing should work when we're in dreaming sleep except the eyeballs and the diaphragm, and that depends on these cholinergic neurons in the pons. And it's an area commonly affected in SCAR. So in SCAR you can lose that turning off of muscle tone in sleep and get lots of movements in sleep, which is one of the features that you can see in SCAR. Now, how we sort of went from this sort of passive process about sleep where it's all about fairies and the whole Freudian thing about you go to sleep and a bad thing happens, it's either the devil or repressed things about that have a sexual connotation, is that in the 1930s there was a viral epidemic in Europe, and a guy followed people afterwards, and when they died sectioned their brains and looked at these bits of the brain, the cerebellum, the pons, and the top of the spinal cord, again the bits affected by SCAR, and found that those people either were very sleepy, and that was people who had a problem with that bit of the brain. They couldn't sleep, problems with that bit of the brain, or had both, and that's problems with this bit of the brain. And this is an area that is commonly affected in SCAR, which is similar to this area here on the scan, showing someone with SCAR where this area is just really withered away or starting to wither away. So that it's, we've known from the 1930s that these parts of the brain are very important in maintaining wake, maintaining sleep, and maintaining that balance of the seesaw, one or the other. And they're the same bits of the brain that can be affected in SCAR.